The World Wide Web is an open-source information space where documents and other web resources are identified by URLs, interlinked by hypertext links, and can be accessed via the Internet. It has become known simply as the web. The World Wide Web was central to the development of the information age and is the primary tool billions of people use to interact on the Internet. The World Wide Web was invented by English scientist Tim Berners-Lee in 1989. He wrote the first web browser in 1990 while employed at CERN in Switzerland. Webpages are primarily text documents formatted and annotated with hypertext markup language. In addition to formatted text, web pages may contain images, video, and software components that are rendered in the user's web browser as coherent pages of multimedia content. Embedded hyperlinks permit users to navigate between web pages. Multiple web pages with a common theme, a common domain name, or both, may be called a website. Website content can largely be provided by the publisher, or interactive where users contribute content or the content depends upon the user or their actions. Websites may be mostly informative, primarily for entertainment, or largely for commercial purposes. History. Berners-Lee's vision of a global hyperlinked information system became a possibility by the second half of the 1980s. By 1985, the global Internet began to proliferate in Europe and the domain name system came into being. In 1988, the first direct IP connection between Europe and North America was made and Berners-Lee began to openly discuss the possibility of a web-like system at CERN. In March 1989, Tim Berners-Lee issued a proposal to the management at CERN for a system called Mesh that referenced Inquire, a database and software project he had built in 1980. Which used the term web and described a more elaborate information management system based on links embedded in readable text. Imagine, then, the references in this document all being associated with the network address of the thing to which they referred, so that while reading this document you could skip to them with a click of the mouse. Such a system, he explained, could be referred to using one of the existing meanings of the word hypertext, a term that he says was coined in the 1950s. There is no reason, the proposal continues, why such hypertext links could not encompass multimedia documents including graphics, speech and video. So that Berners-Lee goes on to use the term hypermedia. With help from his colleague and fellow hypertext enthusiast Robert Kaya, he published a more formal proposal on 12 November 1990 to build a hypertext project called World Wide Web as a web of hypertext documents to be viewed by browsers using a client-server architecture. At this point HTML and HTTP had already been in development for about 2 months and the first web server was about a month from completing its first successful test. This proposal estimated that a read-only web would be developed within 3 months and that it would take 6 months to achieve the creation of new links and new material by readers, so that authorship becomes universal, as well as the automatic notification of a reader when new material of interest to him/her has become available. While the read-only goal was met, accessible authorship of web content took longer to mature, with the wiki concept, web dev blogs, Web 2.0 and RSS, Atom. The proposal was modeled after the SGML reader Dynatext by Electronic Book Technology, a spin-off from the Institute for Research in Information and Scholarship at Brown University. The Dynatext system, licensed by CERN, was a key player in the extension of SGML ISO 8879 to 1986 to hypermedia within high time. But it was considered too expensive and had an inappropriate licensing policy for use in the general high-energy physics community, namely a fee for each document and each document alteration. A Next computer was used by Berners-Lee as the world's first web server and also to write the first web browser, World Wide Web, in 1990. By Christmas 1990, Berners-Lee had built all the tools necessary for a working web: the first web browser and the first web server. The first website, which described the project itself, was published on the 20th of December 1990. The first web page may be lost, but Paul Jones of UNC Chapel Hill in North Carolina announced in May 2013 that Berners-Lee gave him what he says is the oldest known web page during a 1991 visit to UNC. Jones stored it on a magneto-optical drive and on his next computer. On 6 August 1991, Berners-Lee published a short summary of the World Wide Web project on the newsgroup Alt. Hypertext. This date also marked the debut of the web as a publicly available service on the Internet, although new users only accessed it after the 23rd of August. For this reason this is considered the Internet's Day. Several news media have reported that the first photo on the web was published by Berners-Lee in 1992. An image of the CERN house band Les Horribles Cernits taken by Silvano de Gennaro. Gennaro has disclaimed this story, writing that media were totally distorting our words for the sake of cheap sensationalism. The first server outside Europe was installed at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center in Palo Alto, California, to host the Spire's HEP database. Accounts differ substantially as to the date of this event. The World Wide Web Consortium's timeline says December 1992, whereas SLAC itself claims December 1991, as does a W3C document titled A Little History of the World Wide Web. The underlying concept of hypertext originated in previous projects from the 1960s, such as the hypertext editing system at Brown University, Ted Nelson's project Xanadu, and Douglas Engelbart's online system. Both Nelson and Engelbart were in turn inspired by Vannevar Bush's microfilm-based Memex, which was described in the 1945 essay, As We May Think. Berners-Lee's breakthrough was to marry hypertext to the Internet. In his book Weaving the Web, he explains that he had repeatedly suggested that a marriage between the two technologies was possible to members of both technical communities. But when no one took up his invitation, he finally assumed the project himself. In the process, he developed three essential technologies: a system of globally unique identifiers for resources on the web and elsewhere, the Universal Document Identifier, later known as Uniform Resource Locator, and Uniform Resource Identifier, the publishing language hypertext markup language, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. The World Wide Web had a number of differences from other hypertext systems available at the time. The web required only unidirectional links rather than bidirectional ones, making it possible for someone to link to another resource without action by the owner of that resource. It also significantly reduced the difficulty of implementing web servers and browsers, but in turn presented the chronic problem of link rot. Unlike predecessors such as HyperCard, the World Wide Web was non-proprietary, making it possible to develop servers and clients independently, and to add extensions without licensing restrictions. On 30 April 1993, CERN announced that the World Wide Web would be free to anyone, with no fees due. Coming 2 months after the announcement that the server implementation of the Gopher protocol was no longer free to use, this produced a rapid shift away from Gopher and towards the web. An early popular web browser was Verilor for Unix and the X windowing system. Scholars generally agree that a turning point for the World Wide Web began with the introduction of the Mosaic Web Browser in 1993. A graphical browser developed by a team at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, led by Mark Andreessen. Funding for Mosaic came from the U.S. High Performance Computing and Communications Initiative and the High Performance Computing and Communication Act of 1991, one of several computing developments initiated by U.S. Senator Al Gore. Prior to the release of Mosaic, Graphics were not commonly mixed with text in web pages, and the web's popularity was less than older protocols in use over the Internet, such as Gopher and Wide Area Information Servers. Mosaic's graphical user interface allowed the web to become, by far, the most popular Internet protocol. The World Wide Web Consortium was founded by Tim Berners-Lee after he left the European Organization for Nuclear Research in October 1994. It was founded at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Laboratory for Computer Science with support from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which had pioneered the Internet. A year later, a second site was founded at INRIA with support from the European Commission DG INFSA, and in 1996, a third continental site was created in Japan at Keio University. By the end of 1994, the total number of websites was still relatively small, but many notable websites were already active that foreshadowed or inspired today's most popular services. Connected by the existing Internet, other websites were created around the world, adding international standards for domain names and HTML. Since then, Berners-Lee has played an active role in guiding the development of web standards, and has advocated his vision of a semantic web. The World Wide Web enabled the spread of information over the Internet through an easy-to-use and flexible format. It thus played an important role in popularizing use of the Internet. Although the two terms are sometimes conflated in popular use, World Wide Web is not synonymous with Internet. The web is an information space containing hyperlinked documents and other resources, identified by their URIs. It is implemented as both client and server software using Internet protocols such as TCP, IP and HTTP. Tim Berners-Lee was knighted in 2004 by Queen Elizabeth II for services to the global development of the Internet. Function. The terms Internet and World Wide Web are often used without much distinction. However, the two are not the same. The Internet is a global system of interconnected computer networks. In contrast, the World Wide Web is one of the services transferred over these networks. It is a collection of text documents and other resources, linked by hyperlinks and URLs, usually accessed by web browsers, from web servers. Viewing a web page on the World Wide Web normally begins either by typing the URL of the page into a web browser, or by following a hyperlink to that page or resource. The web browser then initiates a series of background communication messages to fetch and display the requested page. In the 1990s, using a browser to view web pages, and to move from one web page to another through hyperlinks, came to be known as browsing, web surfing, or navigating the web. Early studies of this new behavior investigated user patterns in using web browsers. One study, for example, found 5 user patterns: exploratory surfing, window surfing, evolved surfing, bounded navigation and targeted navigation. The following example demonstrates the functioning of a web browser when accessing a page at the URL http://www.example.org/home.html. The browser resolves the server name of the URL into an Internet Protocol address using the globally distributed domain name system. This lookup returns an IP address such as 203.0.113.4. The browser then requests the resource by sending an HTTP request across the Internet to the computer at that address. It requests service from a specific TCP port number that is well known for the HTTP service, so that the receiving host can distinguish an HTTP request from other network protocols it may be servicing. The HTTP protocol normally uses port number 80. The content of the HTTP request can be as simple as 2 lines of text. Get/home.html http 1.1 host www.example.org. The computer receiving the HTTP request delivers it to web server software listening for requests on port 80. If the web server can fulfill the request, it sends an HTTP response back to the browser indicating success. HTTP 1.0 OK. Content type text HTML char set equals UTF-8 followed by the content of the requested page. Hypertext markup language for a basic web page might look like this: less than HTML, greater than, less than, head, greater than, less than, title, greater than example.org. The World Wide Web: less than, title, greater than, less than, head, greater than, less than, body, greater than, less than, p, greater than. The World Wide Web, abbreviated as www and commonly known, less than, p, greater than, less than, body, greater than, less than, HTML, greater than. The web browser parses the HTML and interprets the markup that surrounds the words to format the text on the screen. Many web pages use HTML to reference the URLs of other resources such as images, other embedded media, scripts that affect page behavior, and cascading style sheets that affect page layout. The browser makes additional HTTP requests to the web server for these other internet media types. As it receives their content from the web server, the browser progressively renders the page onto the screen as specified by its HTML and these additional resources. Linking: most web pages contain hyperlinks to other related pages and perhaps to downloadable files, source documents, definitions and other web resources. In the underlying HTML, a hyperlink looks like this. Interconnected via hypertext links is dubbed a web of information. Publication on the Internet created what Tim Berners-Lee first called the World Wide Web in November 1990. The hyperlink structure of the www is described by the web graph. The nodes of the web graph correspond to the web pages, the directed edges between them to the hyperlinks. Over time, many web resources pointed to by hyperlinks disappear, relocate, or are replaced with different content. This makes hyperlinks obsolete, a phenomenon referred to in some circles as link rot, and the hyperlinks affected by it are often called dead links. The ephemeral nature of the web has prompted many efforts to archive websites. The Internet Archive, active since 1996, is the best known of such efforts. Dynamic updates of web pages. JavaScript is a scripting language that was initially developed in 1995 by Brendan Eich, then of Netscape, for use within web pages. The standardized version is ECMAScript. To make web pages more interactive, some web applications also use JavaScript techniques such as AJAX. Client-side script is delivered with the page that can make additional HTTP requests to the server, either in response to user actions such as mouse movements or clicks, or based on elapsed time. The server's responses are used to modify the current page rather than creating a new page with each response. So the server needs only to provide limited, incremental information. Multiple AJAX requests can be handled at the same time, and users can interact with the page while data is retrieved. Web pages may also regularly poll the server to check whether new information is available. www prefix. Many host names used for the World Wide Web begin with www because of the long-standing practice of naming Internet hosts according to the services they provide. The host name of a web server is often www, in the same way that it may be FTP for an FTP server, and news or NNTP for a Usenet news server. These host names appear as domain name system or subdomain names, as in www.example.com. The use of www is not required by any technical or policy standard, and many websites do not use it. Indeed, the first ever web server was called knock01.cern.ch. According to Paolo Palazzi, who worked at CERN along with Tim Berners-Lee, The popular use of www as subdomain was accidental. The World Wide Web project page was intended to be published at www.cern.ch, while info.cern.ch was intended to be the CERN homepage. However, the DNS records were never switched, and the practice of prepending www to an institution's website domain name was subsequently copied. Many established websites still use the prefix, or they employ other subdomain names such as www2, secure or N for special purposes. Many such web servers are set up so that both the main domain name and the www subdomain refer to the same site. Others require one form or the other, or they may map to different websites. The use of a subdomain name is useful for load balancing incoming web traffic by creating a CNAME record that points to a cluster of web servers. Since, currently, only a subdomain can be used in a CNAME, the same result cannot be achieved by using the bare domain route. When a user submits an incomplete domain name to a web browser in its address bar input field, some web browsers automatically try adding the prefix www to the beginning of it and possibly .com, .org, and .net at the end, depending on what might be missing. For example, entering Microsoft may be transformed to http://www.microsoft.com/ and OpenOffice to http://www.openoffice.org. This feature started appearing in early versions of Mozilla Firefox, when it still had the working title Firebird, in early 2003. From an earlier practice in browsers such as Lynx, it is reported that Microsoft was granted a U.S. patent for the same idea in 2008, but only for mobile devices. In English, www is usually read as www. Some users pronounce it dub, particularly in New Zealand. Stephen Fry, in his Podgrams series of podcasts, pronounces it wh. The English writer Douglas Adams once quipped in The Independent on Sunday, "The World Wide Web is the only thing I know of whose shortened form takes 3 times longer to say than what it's short for." In Mandarin Chinese, World Wide Web is commonly translated via a phono-semantic matching to one we acute I wang, which satisfies www and literally means myriad-dimensional net, a translation that reflects the design concept and proliferation of the World Wide Web. Tim Berners-Lee's Web Space states that World Wide Web is officially spelled as 3 separate words, each capitalized, with no intervening hyphens. Use of the www prefix is declining as Web 2.0 web applications seek to brand their domain names and make them easily pronounceable. As the mobile web grows in popularity, services like gmail.com, outlook.com, myspace.com, facebook.com and twitter.com are most often mentioned without adding www to the domain. Scheme specifiers. The scheme specifiers HTTP and HTTPS at the start of a web URI refer to Hypertext Transfer Protocol or HTTP Secure, respectively. They specify the communication protocol to use for the request and response. The HTTP protocol is fundamental to the operation of the World Wide Web, and the added encryption layer in HTTPS is essential when browsers send or retrieve confidential data, such as passwords or banking information. Web browsers usually automatically prepend HTTP to user-entered URIs. If omitted,